Chapter 4. Stuck with Grace. Joey observed the darkening slopes on both sides of the narrow dirt road, where the bus was rolling on muddy wheels closer towards the large rock in the grassy spine, about 2 yards out. Much like a black bull teasing a sudden charge on a trapped, dumbfounded, impotent, obese hog in its way, except there were no eyes, ears, snorty nose, tail nor stubby feet. At least, that was how the rock appeared in Joey's wild imagination. The entire area was glazed by twilight and crooning with the symphony of creaking, crooking, chirping, among a host of other nightfall sounds. Grace leaned on Joey again, peering out the front glass. And he lost focus, for a brief moment.
"What crazy person or persons do such nonsense around here?"
Brian murmured loudly, shaking his head and decelerating the bus to a crawl.
"Or it might be an act of nature. Maybe it rolled from up there,"
Joey said, pointing right past Grace's face up the right-hand slope. The bus halted a few feet facing the rock. Brian lowered his head, surveilling the bushes, and around the bus, like a sniper.
"This might not be a good idea. But what else can we do, other than confront this obstacle?"
he said, tapping the steering wheel contemplatively. Joey said,
"Fear not, peeps. I grew up in Manchester, half my life, and I've never had a reason to fear anything in these areas."
Joey glanced down at the dashboard. 5:46 p.m. He only had less than 15 minutes to be on time for his sermon. Brian said,
"Well, I don't own a gun to protect us, except for my B-66.
"What's a B-66?
Grace asked, genuinely ignorant of the term.
"His Bible. B for Bible. 66 for the number of books that make up the Bible."
"You got that correct, brother,"
Brian mused.
"But you might need to tell her about the power of the Christian's weapon, so she can use it effectively."
Joey grinned. And Brian sighed heavily, then said,
"Come on, preacher, let's go tackle that big boy out there. Or we might have to reverse all the way along this awful road, and then take the longer route, and end up reaching church at the benediction, or walk from here and lose our minds or even our lives."
Joey was already willing to assist. He hadn't even put on his jacket yet. He exchanged affectionate stares with Grace, while rising. On his feet as well. Then he and Brian hopped out of the bus at the same time. Brian on the right, he on the left through the side doorway. He slid it shut behind himself, securing his future bride inside. Brian left the driver's door wide open. Joey tried hard to dismiss Brian's error. And, to the extent that this appeared to be a secluded, safe area, Joey was able to overtly control his protestation. Joey was a driver too. But he only owned a license, not a vehicle. Not as yet. He was saving money to begin seminary in the coming year. For, even though his parents could afford to fully fund his tuition, 2 years before, they had shown a disdain for him studying theology as a full-time profession. Anything in the sciences would have gotten their approval. As a result, Joey was saving hard-earned money from his mural commissions income, and graphic designs he sold at the local gallery and at fairs. And no one, including Grace, needed to know about his struggles with his parents. To Joey, impression was the key to the door of lasting reputation. They approached the rough dirt-coated rock cautiously. Then Joey, tall and lean, and Brian, tall and lanky and less melanated, stood in both directions of the road and rolled up the cuffs of their dress shirts. Then they put their feet around the dense obstacle, and their hands on it, and their faces over it. Next, their backs into the task, teeth bared and throats emitting low grunts, they began rolling it, flipping it, and turning it to the closer banking. Then they paused. They had just heard the side door sliding open. Then Grace disembarked the minibus and pushed the door shut again. Brian cleared his throat. Joey frowned.
"You could have stayed inside, babe. You looked cold. Put on my jacket, if you need to."
He tried to sound as polite as he should. Brian seemed to have no issue waiting on him to address Grace's discomfort, either.
"Yeah, thanks, hon, but a little fresh air is good,"
she replied, then inhaled deeply, smiling and hugging herself. Sweeping her with his hungry eyes, Joey's heart galloped for a moment. She was formed too amazingly to look more than amazing to his sanctified eyes. Brian rocked his head once, spread his hands and shrugged, as if in agreement with Joey's unspoken assessment, but not wanting to seem intrusive. And Joey didn't have a problem with that. Joey and Brian synergized again and finished rolling the rock from the edge of the bank into the bushes.
There we go. Problem solved,
Brian said, a bit of hoarseness in his tired voice. They straightened up simultaneously, brushing off their hands, having accomplished their task. Their clothes remained immaculate. Brian checked his wristwatch, then gazed at the sky. Most of the shaded environment was now splattered with the last streaming of soft, orange light.
Thanks, again, preacher. You just prevented me from allowing the sun to set on my anger. These careless people are devils, I tell you. We would have to walk the remaining half a mile out of this godforsaken place or wait on a ride that wouldn't get here before we're in critical conditions. Or I might just be thinking a bit too pessimistically.
He chuckled awkwardly, bordering on genuine fearfulness.
But I must also say this, honestly, I like preachers who are not afraid to get their hands dirty. You're not a simple man, brother simple man. No pun intended.
This time Brian laughed loudly. Then, calmer, and more collected than his church brother, Joey said.
No problem. As long as Grace is okay, then we should be good.
He then turned around to escort his girlfriend, the love of his life, back to the chuckling bus. Behind them, Brian seemed to be brushing off his own pants or shoes, or both, maybe with leaves or his bare hands.
I like a man who's not afraid to get his hands dirty,
Grace muttered to Joey seductively in her angelic voice, as they reached the slide door. Then she gave him a saucy and pert stare, as if she was expecting him to kiss her. And all areas of his body began cheering on his lips.
Get in quickly, guys. It's already sunset. Plus, you have a lot of preaching to do before church is over tonight, Joey.
So, they began to climb into the awning bus. Grace first, lifting the hem of her dress slightly to put her right leg up.
Not inside the bus. Into that grassy clearing. Over there.
Grace turned her head, looking past Joey.
Oh, my God!
She yelled, terrified, her hands over her mouth. And she almost slipped off the step up, had Joey not caught her before he could do anything else, even to glance behind himself. Then, amidst the pleasant noise of nature, Joey vaguely heard a metallic click.
Excuse me? What clearing?
Joey asked on secondary delayed impulse, because he had waited until he was certain Grace was steady, before he turned to face Brian. Then Joey froze. There was a short, dark, shiny gun in Brian's right hand, a real gun in the deacon's hand, and it wasn't the B-66, because a dark, metal muzzle was aimed at them.
What is this? What's going on?
Joey managed to say. Then Brian growled through clenched teeth.
Both of you, just shut up, and do as I say.
Then he scowled as he beckoned them with the muzzle of his gun to an opening in the nearby bushes to their right. And as they complied in shock, their abductor said behind them,
I will never ever allow the sun to go down on my awful anger. Which means that I will have to eliminate the root causes of my anger. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
He grinned broadly, sinisterly, like a fox. Joey and Grace stared wide-eyed into the bushes in front of them, fear tying Joey's tongue, and, evidently, Grace's too, as she was making mutterings of panic, but not enough to grab the attention of anyone who might have been passing through the vicinity, such as a farmer, or nature walker, or even a mentally ill person. Any of these three would have probably been of help now. As they skipped over a narrow trench into the low grass, their surprising abductor snorted and said,
No crying. You want to sleep together before you go to heaven. Right? So, it won't be long, my frenemies. You'll be home to your maker, soon and very soon. But there's something else I need to do first, Gracie. My amazing Gracie.
Grace winced, gripping Joey's right arm and trying not to see Brian Reeder licking his lips at her. And Joey gulped, as their church brother and diligent deacon glared at them like a killer.